Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Grant. I'm going to be presenting the information session with you guys today. Before we start, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know it takes an hour out of your day to come and join this information session, so we really appreciate you taking your time out. Hopefully you learned something about the CELPIP test that you didn't know already. Hopefully you find a lot of information about how to prepare for the test and a lot of information as well. So we really want to thank you guys for joining us today. So this information session is scheduled to go for about an hour. We will be holding a question and answer period near the end of the information session. So one thing I would ask is that you just hold off any questions that you have until the question and answer period starts. If you do have any questions at the moment, or if you think of any questions during the information session, just make sure you write those down, and I'll be happy to answer those once we start the question and answer period. That's just to make sure that no one's distracted while listening to the information session, but also that your question may be asked during the information session as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started again. Thanks for joining us so much, guys. So the agenda today is we are going to start with some general information, including key features and benefits about the CELPIP test. We also have two different types of CELPIP tests, our CELPIP General test and our CELPIP General LS test. So we're going to go through the format and scoring of each test. We're going to go through some test information, including how do you prepare for the CELPIP test and what to expect on the day of the test as well. We also have some free study tips, and that's always a very popular segment of the information session. So I'm glad you guys have joined us for that. We also are going to be providing a discount code for everyone joining the information session. So I'm glad you've joined us for that as well. We are going to have a survey that we'd ask you to fill out to win some free study material. And as I promised, we're going to have a question and answer period. So typically I would speak about the CELPIP test for about 40 minutes, and then we'll probably have around 20 minutes for any questions that you guys have. Now, of course, if there's lots of questions, if we need to stay behind, that's perfectly fine. But again, just make sure you hold off any questions until we get to that question and answer periods. Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and get started, guys. So we are going to start from the very basics, just in case this is the first time that you're hearing about the CELPIP test. So what is CELPIP? So CELPIP stands for the Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program, and it is pronounced CELPIP. Now, you're never going to be asked on the day of the test, what does CELPIP stand for? How do you pronounce CELPIP? We do get a couple different pronunciations like CELPIP, for example. But CELPIP is a mouthful, Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program, so you don't need to memorize that. You don't need to know that on the day of the test, but just for your general information, there it is. Now, the CELPIP test is the only Canadian test that's accepted by Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. So if you're applying for immigration or permanent resident status or to become a Canadian citizen, the CELPIP test is the only Canadian test that's designated by the IRCC. Now, every time we talk about the IRCC, that is formally known as the name that you might know them by, which is the CIC, or Citizenship and Immigration Canada. So just keep in mind that anytime we talk about the IRCC, it's the CIC. We've got quite a few questions already. I just want to remind everyone that we are going to have that question and answer period in about half an hour, so I appreciate your patience. Now, the CELPIP test is a completely computer-delivered test, and it's there to prove your English language proficiency if you're applying for permanent resident status in Canada or other forms of immigration, if you're looking to become a Canadian citizen, or if you're looking for some other purposes that are not affiliated with the IRCC. So if you're looking to become an immigration consultant with the ICCRC, or a real estate agent with the UBC Sauder School of Business, or some universities or colleges or other professional associations accept the CELPIP test as well. So those are some of the reasons that you might be taking the CELPIP test. Now, again, as I mentioned, we're assessing your English language proficiency with the CELPIP test. One thing I'll let you know is that you don't need to be a rocket science to do very well on the CELPIP test. We're not asking for your technical English, your academic English. We're looking at your everyday English language proficiency. So the CELPIP test tests your English language proficiency in 4 areas: listening, speaking, writing, and reading. Now, as I mentioned at the very top, we do have 2 different kinds of CELPIP tests. So you want to make sure that you register for the correct test for your purpose. So the CELPIP General test is the test that you want to take if you're applying to become a permanent resident in Canada or to immigrate to Canada, or if you're looking to become a real estate agent with the UBC Sauder School of Business or an immigration consultant with the ICCRC. So the CELPIP General test assesses you in all 4 of our test components: listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and the registration fee is $280 plus tax. The CELPIP General LS test is if you're applying for Canadian citizenship only. So L stands for listening and S stands for speaking, because that's all you need for Canadian citizenship. So because it's a shorter test and because it only has 2 test components, the registration fee is $195 plus tax. One tip is when you're registering for the CELPIP test, if you're applying for the CELPIP General test, it always has that red logo that you see there. If you're applying for the CELPIP General LS test, it always has that green logo. And you'll be able to register for the CELPIP test on our website at www.celpip.ca. Now, a popular question that we get a lot is, where can I take the test? So we have over 40 locations across Canada. Pretty much every major city in Canada has multiple test centers. So I know we had a lot of people from Ontario. There's lots of test centers in Ontario, whether it's Toronto or some of the other cities. We've got lots of test centers here in the Metro Vancouver area. So Vancouver, Surrey, Abbotsford, lots of test centers here. Calgary, Alberta, they've got test centers there. So most major cities in Canada, you will find a CELPIP test center. We've also opened up international testing recently. So we do have a test center in the United States, in New York. We've got a test center in the United Arab Emirates, Dubai. And we've got a test center that we've just opened up in the Philippines last month in March. So that's very exciting. We are also going to be opening up a test center in June, July, or August, not sure exact date yet, in India. So that's very exciting. We are going to be opening up a test center in India in June, July, or August. So if you're looking to find out more information about our test center that will be opening up in India, we do have a newsletter that you can sign up for on our website, specifically about updates about our test center in India. One thing as well, if you're looking to find a whole list of all of the test centers that we have or all of the locations that we have, if you go onto our website, again, www.celpip.ca, you'll be able to click the test locations button and you'll be able to see all of our test locations, dates, times, and see if there's a test center close to you. Our goal with the CELPIP test is to make sure that the whole experience is as convenient for you as possible. We, of course, understand that it's a high stakes test. You're applying for immigration or citizenship or to become, a career with a real estate agency or immigration consultant. So these are, of course, very important things. But as much as possible, we want to make sure that the whole experience for you is as convenient for you as we can. Now, I just want to go through a quick key features about our CELPIP test as well. So as I mentioned, the really cool thing about the CELPIP test is that it's the only Canadian test that's designated by the IRCC. So the CELPIP test was originally developed at the University of British Columbia here in Vancouver, and it's now administered by Paragon Testing Enterprises. We're in Vancouver as well, and we are a subsidiary of the University of British Columbia. Now, the CELPIP test is completely computer delivered. So in the reading section, you're going to be reading passages on your computer monitor. You're going to be answering questions based on what you've read. On the listening section, you're going to have headphones. You're going to be listening to audio clips and answering questions based on what you've heard. In the writing section, you're going to be typing on a keyboard. And in the speaking section, you're going to be speaking into a microphone. So there is no speaking interview with an actual examiner on the day of the test. And we'll go through some benefits about that in just a moment. But because the CELPIP test is completely computer delivered, all components are completed in one quick test sitting. So it's 3 hours for the CELPIP General test, and it's 1 hour and 10 minutes for the CELPIP General LS test. So unlike some other tests where there is a speaking interview, you don't need to come back on a different day for an appointment. You don't need to come back on the same day for an appointment. You don't need to take any breaks during the test. It's all taken in one time, again, to make sure that the whole experience is as convenient for you as possible. So as I mentioned, there are some benefits about not having a speaking interview with an examiner. Again, on the CELPIP test, you're going to be speaking into a microphone. One of the big benefits is that you don't need to speak to someone that you don't know on the CELPIP test. So unlike some other tests where you might be speaking to a stranger, you're not doing that with the CELPIP test. And there's a lot of benefits about that. I mean, of course, the CELPIP test or any English language proficiency test is a high stakes test. So on the day of the test, you might get intimidated if you're speaking to a stranger. You might worry that the stranger is not paying attention to you, or that they might be biased, or that they're not even really listening or not really caring about what you say. With the CELPIP test, you don't have to worry about that. Again, you're speaking into a microphone for the speaking section. As well, on the day of the test in the speaking section, the questions are written out for you so that you can always refer to them. So on some other tests, when you're speaking to an examiner in the speaking section, for example, you might forget what the question is, or you might forget what you're supposed to talk about while you're talking. With the CELPIP test, because you're speaking into a microphone in front of the computer, you're never going to forget the question because it's going to be there in front of you the whole time. Most importantly, with the CELPIP test, you're not just relying on one person to assess your speaking. We're actually sending your responses to up to 4 of our independent raters, which makes your score very accurate. Now, as you'll see here, the CELPIP test also uses Canadian English and accents. So it's the same Canadian English and accents that you hear on a daily basis and see on a daily basis as well. A couple of things to mention though, if you are used to American spelling or American English, that's no problem. So we accept both Canadian or British or Australian English, Canadian, British, or American English. So for example, here in Canada, we spell the word favorite F-A-V-O-U-R-I-T-E. With American spelling, they would take out the U, and favorite would be spelled F-A-V-O-R-I-T-E. So we accept both spellings, Canadian and American spelling. Another thing that you'll see is that accents. That's a popular question that we get a lot. People worry, well, I have a different accent. I don't sound like a native English speaker. How am I going to do well on the test? So I can let you know that our raters do not take your accent into account when they're providing you with your score. Our raters are expecting everyone to have a different accent. For example, I have a different accent than even another Canadian native English speaker will have. So do not worry about your accent at all. You're not going to have any impact on your score because of your accent. So please do not worry about that. Now, of course, if you're having trouble pronouncing words, if people are saying, they're having a tough time hearing the words that you're pronouncing, that's something that you would want to focus on when you're preparing for the test, but do not worry about your accent at all. As I mentioned before, the CELPIP test is completely computer delivered, so all sections of the test are taken in front of a computer. There's a lot of advantages about that. We do provide, again, a keyboard for the writing section, so you're not writing with a pen or a pencil, you'll be typing on a keyboard. Most people these days are more comfortable typing on a keyboard and faster typing at a keyboard than they are writing with a pen or a pencil. You also don't have to worry about scratching out if you've made a spelling mistake or if you've made a mistake or erasing anything. You just can use the backspace button and retype what you need to say. Now, in the listening section, we do provide a headset, so you'll be able to listen to the audio clips. Now, the volume is adjustable. We provide that flexibility. So in the listening section, if you're listening to audio clips and the volume is too high, you can always turn down the volume. If the volume is too low, you can always turn up the volume as well. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know is that we actually provide you spell check in the writing section. So if you're typing your response in the writing section and you've made a spelling mistake, it'll be underlined in red and you'll be able to correct that spelling mistake. We want to provide you with the same functions that you have when you're writing an email at home or writing a report at work. You have spell check there. We want to provide you with spell check as well. Now, a couple of things to, of course, keep in mind with spell check. I mean, as great as that is, spelling still does count, so do make sure you take advantage of the spell check. Make sure you proofread that your spelling is correct. As well, as we all know, the English language can be a tricky language. So for example, the word steak. If I want to eat a steak, it would be S-T-E-A-K. If I want to stake a badminton net in the ground, for example, it would be spelled S-T-A-K-E. So do make sure that you use the correct word and the correct spelling of the word in the correct context, because spell check can't differentiate, for example, between a steak that you want to eat and staking something into the ground. Now you'll see here that we provide editing functions. What that means is copy and paste. So let's say that you've written your whole response and you're thinking, oh no, I want to move this sentence from the middle of my response to the beginning of my response. You don't have to delete the sentence. You don't have to delete anything. You can actually just copy and paste that sentence. Now, in each writing task, we are asking you to write within 150 to 200 words. Now, on the CELPIP test, because it's a computer-based test, you're not going to have to sit there counting your words, making sure you're in the word count. The word count will be in front of you at all times, so the computer will be counting how many words you're typing. So you'll be able to see on the computer screen that you've written 10 words, that you've written 50 words, that you've written 100 words. So that information is going to be in front of you at all times. Now, again, CELPIP tests, as I mentioned before, completely computer delivered. So because of that, there is a timer countdown on questions and sections of tests. You don't need to put your hand up and ask the test center staff how much time is left. They're not going to interrupt your test and say, this much time is left for this section. You will have all that information in front of you so that you don't need to distract yourself. You don't even need to look for a clock in the room. You'll be able to see the timer countdown for the test at all times. So why CELPIP? Why, other than the spell check that we provide, test centers and multiple locations, why else would you choose CELPIP? So first of all, there is a very easy online registration. You'll be able to register for the CELPIP test 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the comfort of your own home or in your work on our website at www.celpip.ca. You can even register in your pajamas if you'd like. So you don't need to go anywhere and register. It takes about 10 minutes out of your day to register for the CELPIP test. Now, one very important fact is that we actually do provide free sample tests on our website. So if there's anything that you take out of this information session today, please make sure that you take our free online sample tests. For myself, I consider the sample test as the best start in terms of preparing for the CELPIP test, because the sample tests are the exact same format as the actual test. So they're going to give you a really good idea of what the test is like, what to expect on the day of the test, and make sure that you feel prepared as well. Even if you're a native English speaker or someone who's very, very confident with your English language proficiency, still take that online sample test. We don't want anyone to go into the test and being surprised or wondering, what have I got myself into? So that's why we provide those free online sample tests. There's one free sample test on our website for anyone to access at www.celpip.ca. If you open up a CELPIP account, which you need to do to register for the test, you'll also get a free practice test as well with different questions. So please make sure you do take advantage of those sample tests. Now, because the CELPIP test is, as I've mentioned, a completely computer-based test, we do provide results very quickly. Results are posted online 8 business days after your test. If you need the results even sooner, though, we do have an express rating option where results are posted online 3 business days after the test. And we'll go through those options in just a few minutes as well. We also provide various helpful study materials. So other than the free sample tests that we offer, there's tons of study materials to help you prepare as well. And then if you're interested in taking an actual class or course to prepare for the CELPIP test, those are offered at third-party institutions across Canada. So you'll be able to do a quick Google search to find out what preparation programs there are for the CELPIP tests. Great, so now I'm just going to go quickly through the format of our CELPIP tests. Now this information is listed on our website, again, www.celpip.ca. So if you're writing down notes today, don't feel that you need to write down the format. Again, you can access the format at any time on our website, but I do just want to quickly go through that with you guys today. So for the CELPIP general test, remember that's the test if you're applying for permanent resident status or Canadian citizenship, or if you're looking to become a real estate agent with the UBC Sauder School of Business or an immigration consultant with the ICCRC. So that CELPIP general test goes listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And it's always in that same order. You always start with listening, you then move to reading, then move to writing, and then move to speaking. Now, the CELPIP General LS test, remember, is the test that you take if you're applying for Canadian citizenship. So the CELPIP General LS test starts with listening and then moves on to speaking. Again, always that same order. You always start with listening, then move on to speaking. So I'm just going to break down the format a little bit for you guys quickly. Again, this is all posted on our website if you are writing down notes, so don't feel that you have to write this all down. So no matter which test you're taking, whether it's the CELPIP General test or the CELPIP General LS test, you're going to start with the listening section. So remember, in the listening section, you're going to have headphones. You're going to be listening to audio clips in those headphones, and you're going to be answering questions based on what you've heard. In the listening section, all of the questions are multiple choice. So just to make sure that you get your results as quickly as possible, the listening section is automatically rated by our computers. And as you'll see here, we do start off with 2 practice tasks. That's to make sure you know how the listening section works. We don't want you making any simple mistakes about the format of the test just because you don't know how the test works. So we want to provide you with those practice tasks. And then you'll have 8 questions for listening to problem solving, 5 questions for listening to a daily life conversation, 6 questions for listening for information, 5 questions for listening to a news item, 8 questions for listening to a discussion, and 6 questions for listening to viewpoints. One thing to keep in mind about the listening section as well is that it does contain what's called unscored items. So these are a few questions or a part that is used for test development only and does not count towards your score. So these few unscored items can be found anywhere within the listening section and will have the same format as any other part of the listening section. So in general, you're not going to know which parts of the test contain these few unscored items and which questions count towards your score. So just make sure you apply your best effort to every single question and part of the test. And then you'll be moving on to the reading section if you're taking the CELPIP general test. So for the reading section, you're going to be reading passages on the computer monitor and answering questions based on what you're reading. Now, most questions are multiple choice or fill in the blank. So the reading section is also automatically rated by a computer to make sure that you get your scores as quickly as possible. So we do provide you a practice task again, just to make sure you know how the reading section works. And then you will be answering 11 questions for reading correspondence, 8 questions for reading to apply a diagram, 9 questions for reading for information, and 10 questions for reading for viewpoints. Like the listening section, the reading section also contains these few unscored items that are used for test development only. So again, these unscored items can be found anywhere within the reading section and have the same format as any other part of the reading section. So again, you're not going to know which questions count towards your score and which do not. So as I'm sure everyone does, make sure you apply your best effort to every single part or question of the test. Then if you're taking the CELPIP general test, you'll move on to the writing section. So we'll be asking you to write an email and respond to a survey question. So again, you're going to be typing on a keyboard. We're going to provide you spell check, copy and paste. And again, you're going to have a word count of 150 to 200 words for each task that you're writing. So do make sure you stay in that as much as possible. The writing section, again, we're going to be sending your responses to multiple raters to make sure that your score is as accurate as possible. Finally, you're going to end with the speaking section, no matter which test you take, whether it's the CELPIP general test or the CELPIP general LS test. So again, in the speaking section, you're not going to be speaking to anyone in person. Your responses are going to be recorded into a microphone and then sent electronically to our trained and experienced raters across Canada. So again, in the speaking section, we do have a practice task. That's to make sure that your microphone works and that you understand how the speaking section works. And then you'll be giving advice, talking about a personal experience, describe a scene, making predictions, compare and persuade, deal with a difficult situation, express opinions, and describe an unusual situation. And that's the format of the CELPIP test. So another popular question that we get a lot is what to expect on the day of the test. So first of all, you do need to arrive at least 45 minutes in advance of the test start time for our check-in process. So for example, if your test starts at 10 a.m., you need to make sure that you're at the test center by 9:15 at the latest. And then you need to make sure you present the original and valid unexpired identification that you used to register for the test. So if you're taking the CELPIP general test, you need to present your original and valid passport booklet. The only exceptions are if you're bringing a refugee protection claimant document or a travel document, and those need to be pre-approved by our head office. So once you're trying to register, you'll see that you'll need to contact us if you're using a refugee protection claimant or a travel document. Now, if you're taking the CELPIP general test for what's called non-immigration refugees and citizenship Canada purposes, and that's if you're looking to become a real estate agent with the UBC Sauder School of Business or an immigration consultant with the ICCRC. And then you are also be able to present your original and valid provincial identification card, for example, a BCID here in British Columbia, or your original and valid provincial driver's license. Now, if you're taking the CELPIP General LS test, remember that's our test you're taking for Canadian citizenship only. You can present your original and valid original and valid passport booklet, or your original and valid Canadian permanent resident card. So in general, original just means that unfortunately, we are not able to accept any photocopies or scans or pictures of any of the documentation that you're bringing, and we're not able to accept expired identification as well. Now, as well as arriving 45 minutes in advance and bringing the original and valid unexpired identification that you registered with, you also need to make sure you present a copy of our confirmation email that we email you once you registered for the test. And you can either print that off or show it on your smartphone. Everything else is provided for you. That's all you need to take the test. So for example, we provide you with paper and pen so that you're able to take notes during the test. Just keep in mind that the paper and pen will be taken at the end of the test for security. So just make sure that you're not writing your grocery list for the day, you're not writing down any personal information, just write down notes about the test. Also keep in mind, as well as the original and valid identification that you bring to the test, your photo will be taken at check-in for further identification as well. One thing I wanted to give you guys as well today is a picture of one of our test centers. So this is our Paragon Testing Enterprises test center here in Vancouver. So not all test centers look like this, but this is just an idea of what one of our test centers looks like, so you get to know on the day of the test what to expect. So as you can see, there's separation between all test takers. Here at the Paragon Testing Enterprises Test Center, it is cubicles between each test taker. There's also dividers so that you're not be distracted by the person. So all test centers will have dividers between test takers and will have separation between test takers. You also see the headphones that we provide at the test, and of course everyone's computers and seats. So again, not all test centers look like this, but this is just an idea of what to expect on the day of the test as well. Another popular question that we get a lot is how is the CELPIP test scored? What does the scoring system look like? So each component of the test that you take, for example, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, will be given a CELPIP level that you see on the left-hand side. So below is a chart of each CELPIP level and its corresponding description. So since the CELPIP test scores have been calibrated against what's called the Canadian Language Benchmark, also known as CLB levels, we have included the CLB level equivalencies on the right for your information. So the CLB, or Canadian Language Benchmark, for example, is what Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada is looking for. Another question that we get a lot is, have I passed the test? Have I failed? Unfortunately, we don't know that information. As you've seen from this information session, there's so many different institutions that accept the results of the CELPIP test. So we don't know what scores you're required to get. I mean, there's so many different types of immigration streams that you might be applying for, and they all require different scores. We can't keep track of that, and we also just don't want to give you wrong information. So make sure you check with the institution that you're applying for to find out what score they require. For example, if you're applying for permanent resident status or Canadian citizenship, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada does post the score requirements on their website. Now, speaking of scoring, one thing I wanted to give you guys today is what our raters are looking for when they're providing you with a score on the speaking and writing section. So they're looking at a few different categories. One is coherence and meaning, and that means our raters are looking or listening for a clear, focused, and well-organized answer. Another category is lexical range or vocabulary, and that means our raters are looking or listening for an answer with a range of vocabulary and with words and phrases put together in a natural way. So you don't always want to use the same words in your speaking response or in your writing response. You don't always want to say, well, this is great, and this is great, and this is great. You might want to say that this is wonderful, this is terrific, this is fantastic. You also don't want to use the same phrases all the time or the same sentence structure all the time. So again, our raters are looking at vocabulary. Vocabulary is so important to the CELPIP test, whether it's the reading section where you need to be able to understand the words that you're reading, whether it's the listening section where you need to be able to understand the words that you're hearing, or again, writing or speaking section where our raters are looking for a range of vocabulary. Our raters are also looking at listenability or readability, also known as comprehensibility. So our raters are looking or listening for an answer that is clear, fluent, and easy to understand. And finally, our raters are looking at task fulfillment. And that means our raters are looking or listening for an answer that addresses all parts of the task sufficiently and effectively. So in the writing section, part of that is being within the word count. So again, we're asking you to write within 150 to 200 words for each writing task. Now, there is what's called a 10% leeway. So you can write 10% less or 10% more, and it will not have an effect on your score. But if we're asking you to write within 150 to 200 words and you're writing 600 words, that's going to have an effect on your score. Same thing if you're writing 50 words, that's going to have an effect on your score as well. And it's the same thing with the speaking section. In the speaking section, we're asking you to speak for 60 or 90 seconds depending on the task. and you want to use as much of that time as possible. We notice with some test takers who are very confident about their native English speaking that they will maybe only speak for 20 seconds or 10 seconds. They feel that they've responded to the task in a very short amount of time. But our raters are looking for you to address all parts of the task sufficiently and effectively, and that means also using as much of the time as possible. So if we're asking you to speak for 60 seconds, use as much of that time as you can. Same thing if we're asking you to speak for 90 seconds, use as much of that time as you can as well. The other thing though is that you don't want to be cut off when the timer counts down. So when you're speaking, you will see a timer. You'll be able to see how much time is left to speak. So you don't want to be cut off in the middle of your sentence or your thought. So you do want to use as much of the time as possible, but also make sure that you're completing your response within the time that we're giving. Hopefully that helps a little bit in terms of what our raters are looking for. In terms of results, results are posted online 8 business days after your test. Now, one thing I'll let you know is that the CELPIP test is kept valid for up to 2 years from the time that you take the test. So your results will be online in your CELPIP account anytime within the 2 years that the results are kept valid for. So even if it's a year down the road and you're wondering, what did I get on this test? You'll be able to sign into your CELPIP account online and you'll still be able to check your scores. Now, once your results are posted online, your hard copy official score reports are mailed out to be received within 4 to 10 business days after the scores have been posted online. So that's within Canada. With international mail, hard copy official score reports by regular mail are typically received within 2 to 3 weeks of your test dates. Now, if you do need the results even sooner, let's say you have an application coming up or a deadline that you're looking to rush, or you just want your results as quickly as possible, a very popular option that we have is called express rating. So with express rating, scores are posted online 3 business days after you take the test, and then the hard copy official score report is sent by express shipping to be received 1 to 3 business days after the online scores are released. So you can register for express rating up to 24 hours before your test in your CELPIP account, or during the online registration, you'll be asked if you'd like to add express rating as well. Now, we are getting the results very quickly for you with express rating, so unfortunately there is a cost. So with the CELPIP General test, it's $100 plus tax to add express rating, and for the CELPIP General LS test, it's $70 plus tax for express rating. But we hear a lot of feedback that it's worth it to be able to get your results as quickly as possible, again, especially if you have a deadline or an application that you're looking to have coming up very soon. Great, so I'm just going to go through some test preparation with you guys very quickly. As I mentioned earlier in the information session, the biggest tip that I can provide is please make sure you take our free online sample tests. They're free, so why not? But also they're the same format as the actual test, so they're going to give you a really good idea of what to expect on the test and how to prepare. If I was taking the CELPIP test myself, the first thing I would do is take the free online sample tests. I would then see what areas I'm doing very well on, I'm excelling on, and what areas I really need to work on and prepare on before I register for the test. So for example, once you've taken the sample test, you're going to get a really good idea of what areas you may need to work on, and that's going to help guide you in terms of how to prepare further. For example, once you've taken the sample test, you might have a better idea of which of our online study material or which of our paperback study material would help best prepare you for the test. So again, we do have lots of study material available for purchase online. We've got paperback books that we can mail out to you. We've got online study material that you can access immediately after you purchase. So that's a great, there are some great tools there for you to help you prepare. So if you go to www.celpip.ca and click study materials, you will see a whole bookstore of all of our study material. And again, if you're looking to take an actual course or a class to prepare for the CELPIP test, there are preparation programs offered at institutions across Canada. Even many local test centers have preparation programs, so you can contact them to find out if they do have that, or do a quick Google search to find out about the preparation programs near you. Now, very quickly, I just want to go through some of our most popular study material. So the most popular study material that we have is our practice test sets. So we have up to 5 practice test sets now. Each practice test set includes 2 complete practice tests. So they're the exact format as the actual test with real questions like on actual CELPIP tests. Now, of course, keep in mind that the CELPIP test is not a memorization test, so you'll never see the exact questions on any of our online study material or paperback study material or free sample tests that you will see on the actual test. But on these practice tests, you will actually get a CELPIP level in your reading and listening section. So you'll be able to know what your score is in reading and listening and maybe see, am I ready to take the test? Do I need more preparation? We also do provide sample responses in your writing and speaking section. So you'll be able to compare with what other test takers have written or said and what score range they received, let's say a 6 or a 7 or a 9 and a 10, and you'll be able to compare that with what you've written or said as well. And of course, when you bundle the practice test sets, you do save money over buying them separately, so that's always the best value as well. Another very popular study materials are CELPIP Accelerate. So we have a CELPIP Accelerate reading and writing and listening and speaking. You can either buy those separately or together. So this is a self-directed online study program. There's lots of videos and quizzes, sample responses from real test takers. You'll be able to see an analysis of what went wrong and what went well in their responses. There's practice reading and listening tests. And this is one of our only study materials that is accessible on a smartphone. But we've got lots of other study material as well, so these are some of our most popular. Again, there's lots of paperback study material that we can mail out or online study material, and you'll be able to see all of our study material at www.celpip.ca. Now, as I promised, I just want to go through some free study tips quickly with you guys. So in the reading section, the biggest tip that I can provide is practicing skimming and scanning strategies. We find that those test takers who struggle with the reading section are maybe struggling with the English language itself, and that they're reading every question very carefully, reading the instructions very carefully, reading the answer choices, reading very carefully, and reading the passages very carefully, which is a good thing. But you may run out of time if you're reading everything like that very carefully. Something that you might want to practice is using skimming and scanning strategies. So you might scan the passage that you're reading for the answers or for important information. Another tip that some people follow is that keep in mind that the questions are on the same page as the passage. So you might want to read the questions first and look for the answers in the passage, or you might want to read the passage first and answer the questions. If you have read the passage first and then you're reading the question, because they're multiple choice, you should be able to anticipate the answer while reading the question. Now, the CELPIP test is always a forward-moving test. So once you've moved on from one page to the next or one part to the next, you're not able to move backwards. So just make sure that you're happy with your answers before you move on to the next section. In the writing section, again, pay very close attention to the word count. Again, we're asking you to write 150 to 200 words. Again, we've got that 10% leeway where you can write a little bit less or a little bit more. But you want to be within the word count as much as possible. So something that you might want to do when preparing for the CELPIP test is practice writing within 150 to 200 words. If you're only used to like writing a text message, for example, and it's only 10 words, practice writing within that 150 to 200 words. Same thing if you're used to writing, long 1,000-word essays, make sure you do pay attention and practice writing within that 150 to 200 words as well. In the writing section or any section of the test, make sure you do manage your time. And a big part of that, especially in the writing section, is proofreading. Please make sure you read what you've written at least once or twice. Fix any spelling mistakes. Again, we've got that spell check for you in the writing section. Make sure that you read over, fix any grammar or punctuation mistakes. Make sure that you're happy with what you've written before you moved on. In the listening section, make sure you do familiarize yourself with listening to audio from a headphone. I'm sure there's lots of audio clips these days on radio websites or news websites, so you'll be able to practice listening from a headphone if you're not used to that already. And then on the day of the test, do make sure you pay very close attention to the audio clips because they can only be played once. So just as in real life, if you're speaking to a coworker or you're listening to a presentation, you're not able to pause that presentation. You're not able to rewind that presentation. So same thing with the CELPIP test. The listening audio clips are only played once. Now, a big part of that listening section, because the audio clips are only played once, it's strongly recommended to provide a note paper that we give to take down important information. Now, of course, in the listening section, you don't want to write down every single word that you're hearing in the audio clips. You do want to write down only the important information that you're hearing. Finally, in the speaking section, you might want to make sure you practice speaking English with friends, family, and colleagues, as I'm sure everyone's doing already. But you also want to make sure you practice speaking by yourself in front of a computer, because that's how the CELPIP test will be administered. On the day of the test, I would recommend just using as many examples from your personal experiences when the opportunities arise. Some test takers, if they're making up all of the information in their response, they might pause more often to think of what to say. They might say or all more often. But if you're using examples from your personal experience, you'll have more of a natural flow in your speaking, even if you're changing some of the information around. So that's something I'd recommend in the speaking section. Now, we've got a lot of free resources. As you've seen, we have the free sample test. We do, of course, have this information session, so that's a great start to help you guys prepare. We do have a lot of free study tips on our website, and one of the best free resources that we have is our CELPIP pre-test. So this is a free opportunity to take practice questions for the reading and listening sections in an actual CELPIP test center. So you'll be able to go to one of our test centers, take the CELPIP pre-test. It's going to give you a really good idea of what the CELPIP test experience is like, and make sure that you feel prepared as well. So this is something that's very popular. We have our CELPIP pre-test fill up quite quickly. So if you're looking to register for the CELPIP pre-test, please do that at our website at www.celpip.ca. And this is not a free resource, but of course, everyone's always looking for a discount to get as much off the registration fee as possible, for example, or less money on the study material. So keep in mind, as one thing, is that I would strongly recommend signing up for our CELPIP newsletter. So you can sign up for a CELPIP newsletter at www.celpip.ca. You'll be the first to know when you sign up for that newsletter, when we're opening up new test centers, but also when we're starting promotions or discounts. We run promotions or discounts quite often throughout the year. So please make sure you do sign up for that CELPIP newsletter. One of our discounts that we're currently running right now is if you take our academic test, our free pre-test for the academic test, if you take our CELPIP pre-test, it is a free pre-test, you'll get $50 off your CELPIP registration fee. So if you are looking to get $50 off the CELPIP registration fee, you can go onto our website, www.cael.ca, and you'll be able to register for the CELPIP pre-test to get $50 off your CELPIP test registration fee. Now, speaking of discounts, one thing that I promised at the beginning is that we are going to give a discount for you guys today. So if you purchase our CELPIP practice test set 4, and you put in the discount practice set 4 by April 30th, you will get 30% discount off the price of the practice test. So that's something I'd strongly recommend. Now, we are going to be sending a follow-up email to all test takers, so you will be able to get this discount code in your email, but I'll just keep this discount code up for just one moment while I have a quick drink of water. Finally, we do have a survey that we would love you to fill out to give us feedback about the information session. Hopefully you think we presented it well, did a good job. But by filling out the survey, you also will be entered in a draw, and one lucky winner each week will receive the CELPIP Accelerate Listening and Speaking Online. So you get an opportunity to win some free study material, but also give your feedback for the information session as well. So the link for the information session will be included in a follow-up email that I will be sending to all of you today. Great. Well, I have rambled on for about 40 minutes, so we do have lots of time for any questions that you guys have. Keep in mind, if you asked any questions during the information session, I wasn't able to keep track of those. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type those out right now, and we'll be happy to provide any answers that you have. If you're wondering how to ask a question, you would just need to press the orange arrow at the top right-hand side, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Great. So Alex has got the first question here. So for the speaking test, what if my next candidate speaks loudly? Will it record his sound into my test? If yes, what should I do? Well, because you are listening to, because you have headphones on for the full test, we find that you're not typically distracted by other test takers. Our raters often do not hear any other speaking as well because we have that separation and dividers between each test taker. But if you do feel that someone is speaking very loudly next to you, or if there is a noise disruption during the test, put your hand up and our test center staff would be happy to look into that for you. Sanjay is asking, how late can we book a test? Example, 1 or 2 days before. Well, Sanjay, we do recommend registering with as much notice as possible. We want to make sure that you get a seat. Seats do fill up in most of our cities, so do register as much notice as possible. But registrations do close within 40 hours to 72 hours before a test, so do make sure you register for that point. And Asar's asking, I want to know, how does the listening test get difficult as it goes to other tasks? No, the difficulty level for the listening section is the same within each question and part. Great questions today. Thank you so much. Sanjay is asking, for writing test 2, should we use a letter format or an essay format? So our raters are not looking how you format an email, for example, or how you format your response. We're looking at your English language proficiency within the response. So for example, don't worry about having to write, to whom it may regard, or putting a salutation. Just make sure that the response that you're providing has the English language proficiency our raters are looking for. Elnas is asking about the flexibility of their word count in the writing section. So yeah, again, we're asking you to write within 150 to 200 words for each task. But yeah, there is a 10% leeway. So if you write 10% lower or 10% higher, it will not have an effect on your score. As was asking, how much is the original cost for this test material? So you'll be able to go onto our website, www.celpip.ca, to see the cost of all of our study material. It really depends on which ones that you purchase. Ravikanth is asking, who gives the score for writing and speaking? So that's our raters. Again, your responses are sent to multiple raters just to limit any subjectivity in the scoring for the writing and speaking section. So we do have trained and heavily audited raters there. Abdul Ahmad's asking, what are the benefits for the non-scoring questions? That's a great question. So that's we put questions in the test that are used towards development of future testing. So that's something that we do. It has no effect on your score again. It's just, again, to develop the test further. Mohammed's asking a great question. What is the exam retake policy? So you do need to have at least 30 calendar days between each test that you take. So do make sure that you prepare as much as possible so that hopefully you don't have to retake the test. But if you do need to wait at least 30 calendar days between each test. Along's asking, do the listening and reading sections have multiple choice questions or open-ended questions? So the listening section has all multiple choice questions. Even in the reading section, it would either be fill in the blank with a drop-down menu or multiple choice questions. Layla is asking, I've already paid for the test and I'm taking my test on Saturday, April 21st. Can I still use the discount code? So the discount code is for the practice test set 4. So you'll be able to get 30% off the practice test study material. Priyanka is saying, my English speaking is not good, so weird. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Priyanka. I wouldn't be worried. Keep in mind that we've got lots of preparation material to help you out. Hopefully you've taken advantage of some of the free study tips that we have offered today. We've got a full listing of more study tips on our website. And again, lots of preparation material as well. So if you are worried about your speaking, just make sure you prepare as much as possible. Make sure you feel confident and ready before you register for the test. That's one thing that we do notice from some test takers. Some people just register without knowing anything about the test, or they register without doing any preparation. So you guys have done a great start by joining this information session. So do just make sure you feel prepared before you register for the test. Hamid Reza is asking, is time management important in the speaking test? What happens if one would cut off? So again, you don't want to be cut off by the time, but you do want to use as much time as possible. And if you are cut off in, like, let's say the middle of a sentence, or you're being cut off and you haven't been able to give a complete response, that could have an effect on your score. Sian's asking, can I take the pre-test in Ottawa? I'm personally not sure of all of the test locations, but you will be able to go onto our website and see all the pre-test locations, Sian. Lizel's asking, I purchased study materials before attending this webinar. Is there any way that I could take advantage of that discount? Sorry, Lizel, it is unfortunately only for new, only for new study material purchases. Sorry, Lizel. Chloe is asking, I'm applying for non-IRCC. I need to bring both passport and provincial ID. No, so let's say you're applying to become a real estate agent with the UBC Sauder School of Business or applying to the ICCRC. Then you only need one or the other. So you need either an original and valid, passport, or an original and valid provincial ID, or an original and valid driver's license. You only need one original and valid government ID. But if you're taking the test for Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, for example, to become a permanent resident or an immigrant or a Canadian citizen, you do need to present your original and valid passport. Nisarg's asking, does location have some ease in the exam? Like if I give my test from India, does my country have a different way and second language is English? No, so the CELPIP test, no matter which country or location you're taking the test, will be rated the same way. Muzaffar is asking, what if you need to use the washroom during the test? So first of all, we do recommend going to the washroom before you take the test. But of course, if you need to go to the washroom, when you need to go, you need to go. Put up your hand quickly. Our test center staff would be happy to escort you to the washroom. Just keep in mind that unfortunately the CELPIP test is not paused. So that's why you want to make sure you go to the washroom before the test if you can. AJ is asking, does the writing is based on a topic provided or there will be a questionnaire? Yeah, you will have topics that you're asked to write on. So there will be a question that you're actually asked to write on in the writing section. Mohammed's asking about the retake policy as well. So again, you do need to write, so you do need to wait at least 30 calendar days between each test that you take. Maurice is asking, what is a reasonable time to prepare before taking the test to get the highest possible score? Now, that really depends on each test taker. It's very subjective. It really depends on how comfortable you feel about the test. So that's why you'd want to take that free sample test. After you've taken that, you'll have a better idea of how much preparation you might feel that you'll need to take the CELPIP test. Mir's asking, how can I know about future discounts? Yeah, we do list our discounts on our website at www.celpip.ca. So once a discount or promotion starts, that would be posted on our website. But again, as I recommended, you will see our, if you sign up for our CELPIP newsletter, you will know about promotions and discounts as well. Michaela's asking, is the Ashton examination room similar to the Paragon one? Unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure. We have so many different test centers. I'm not sure what each of them looks like. I'm sorry, Michaela. But again, all test centers do provide dividers and separation between test takers. Alok's asking, is there any penalty for incorrect grammar in the writing section? Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure that your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation is correct, as well as everything else that we listed that the raters are looking for. Marine's saying that the speaking test is quite long and no rest. How can I cope with that? Well, the speaking section takes within 15 to 20 minutes. Keep in mind that with each speaking task that you're asked to speak, you will have preparation time, so you will be able to take a breather. We're not asking you to speak constantly for the full 15 to 20 minutes for the speaking section. Hopefully that helps, Marie. Nash Kumar is asking, if I fail, do I have to pay again? Yes, unfortunately. So that's why, again, you want to make sure you prepare as much as possible before taking the tests. Kalpeet's asking, will I get my answer? I'm sorry, you must have asked questions before we started the question and answer period, Kalpeet, which is no problem. Just write down, make sure you ask your questions again. I'll be happy to answer those. Michaela's asking, I already purchased the sets, the practice tests. Can I still apply the discount? No, unfortunately not. I'm sorry about that, Michaela. Sanjay's asking, if we use the spell check by right-clicking and choosing the correct word, do we lose marks? Absolutely not. Our raters do not get access to if you use the spell check or not. Our raters do not get access to how often you use the spell check. Feel free to use the spell check as many times as you need to. Our raters only get your completed response. That's the only information that they get. Priyanka is asking, is express scores possibly come Monday? No, unfortunately, the earliest that express rating scores are posted will be the Tuesday. Sorry about that, Priyanka. Elnaz is saying, I saw a sample writing test in which you should write to your brother. Are we allowed to write informally? Well, we're not looking at your academic English, for example, but you do want to, of course, use a grammatically correct response. So you don't want to write, for example, like you would a text message. You do want to make sure that you're providing a response that is accurate and, of course, is using correct grammar. No problem, Mohammed. Thanks for all the great questions today, guys. Rabbit Camp is asking, do you think the test is tough compared with the IELTS exam? Yeah, unfortunately, I've never taken the IELTS exam myself, so I'm not sure, but that's why we do have a free sample test on our website. So you'll actually be able to compare what you think about the test compared to the different testing out there. Adrian's asking, are the examiners qualified enough to understand non-native or with accents when it comes to grading? Yeah, so as I mentioned, Adrian, during the beginning of the information session, our raters are trained to not take your accent into effect when they're providing you with a score. So do not worry about your accent at all when you're providing your response in the speaking section. Kayla's asking, in case of necessity, can I take a break? Will it affect my time? Unfortunately, there are no breaks during Unfortunately, there are no breaks during the CELPIP test, Michaela. Sorry about that. Liza's saying that the bundle that I recently purchased is not allowing me to access it. Well, give us a phone call, send us an email. We'll be happy to look into that for you, Liza. Abdul Rahman's asking, are there options to retake the areas that you didn't do well? Unfortunately not. So if you do not get the score that you're needing for your institution, you would need to take the full test again. And that's because the institutions that accept the CELPIP test do not allow you to combine scores between different tests. They require you to get the score in just one test. AG is asking, what will the writing be based on? So there's different topics that you'll be asked to write about on the CELPIP test. Deep is asking, can we take the test in any order? Unfortunately not. So it's always the same order each time in the CELPIP test. Again, for the CELPIP general test, you always start off with the reading section, move on to the listening section. Sorry, you start with the listening section, move on to the reading section, then move to the writing section and end with the speaking section. Sergey is asking about combining scores as well. Unfortunately, again, you would need to take the full test again, Sergey, if you're looking to get a higher score. Again, just because the institutions that accept our test do require you to have all scores from just one test. Nasar is asking, my exam is from India. Will it be easier than tests in other countries? No. Every test taker gets the same test. So the test is not easier in any test location. Layla's asking that she tried the sample test link, but it's not working. Is it something to do with my software or computer? I'm not sure about that, Layla. You can always give us a call or send us an email. We can look into that for you. I can confirm that the sample test link is working. So if you're having issues, definitely contact us. We can look into that for you. Use taking, is there any good way to prepare and confirm my level for speaking and writing? Because those are not scored on the online study material. Yeah, again, that's why we provide those sample responses, different levels, different levels of the scores, so you'll be able to compare with what you've written or said to other test takers. Florida is looking to transfer your test. So as long as you have at least 9 days before your test, you can transfer your test to a different date, location, or time, and it's $50 plus tax to do that. Alex asking, should we practice vocabulary related to Canada's culture? For example, wildlife, food. Can we expect questions related to that? Well, the questions should be fairly general, Alok, but of course it's a Canadian test. So, I mean, if you do have the opportunity to look into some Canadian culture, TV shows, books, newspapers, that's something that could be helpful as well. Ganesh is asking me to show the discount code again. Absolutely. There's a discount code for you again, Ganesh. Priyanka is asking if the test is stopped by a computer problem while taking test, what next step we should take. Put up your hand right away. Our test center staff would be happy to look into that for you. Marie is saying, I'm a British citizen. Can I do the test inside Canada or has to be outside Canada? You can take the test anywhere that you're able to travel to or wherever you are. You don't have to be in one particular country versus another. And Jane's asking what is the best way to practice writing for the CELPIP test. Taking advantage of the study material, for example, our practice test sets would be the best way to practice there. So one thing I'll let everyone know is that we have reached the 12 o'clock time here in Vancouver. So we have gone to 1 hour points. We've got lots of questions though, so I'm happy to answer all these questions today. So don't feel that you have to leave. But if you do need to leave, if you booked an hour off for your day, I do want to thank you so much for joining us and joining our information session today. So thank you for joining us today if you do have to leave. But for everyone that's staying around or still has questions, we've got lots of time. I'm not going anywhere, so I'm going to keep answering these questions. But again, if you do need to leave, thank you so much for joining us today. Deep is asking, can we take the different parts of the test in any order? Unfortunately not. It's always the same order. Chloe is asking, I bought the vocabulary book. Would it also help the reading and writing part? Yes, absolutely. Vocabulary is helpful for all 4 sections of the CELPIP test, absolutely. Cat's asking, is there any online teaching course for improving scores? I'm not sure about online courses, but again, there are preparation courses out there at local colleges or institutions or test centers. So you'll be able to do a quick Google search to find if there's any preparation courses near you. Hamid Raz is asking, does having an accent affect the score? Absolutely not. See, as I mentioned, our raters are trained to make sure that your accent is not considered at all when they're providing you with a score. Basham is asking, do we get scores for the practice tests? Only if you, in the reading and listening section for our purchased online practice tests. Again, the writing and speaking responses, we provide sample responses, so you'll be able to compare the scores. Louise is asking, is there a secure place that bags get scored? Yes, absolutely. So each test center does have a secured area. So of course, if you bring in small personal belongings like a cell phone, it's so hard for everyone to be without those these days, myself included. Or if you're bringing like a watch or a small personal item, is a secured area, absolutely. Adrian's asking to re-answer his question. If you still need the question asked again, you can always type that out. Ekaterina is asking, may I have a bottle of water on the test? So some of our test centers do allow you to bring a clear water bottle without any labels on it to the test. If the test center does allow you to do that, it would be kept at the front of the room. When you need a drink of water, you put your hand up and our test center staff would bring you to the water. Now, unfortunately, not all of our test centers allow you to bring water, so just keep in mind that we cannot guarantee that, but some of our test centers do. Michaela's asking, is it possible to get noise protection headphones during the test? Unfortunately not, Michaela, I'm sorry. Yeah, all test takers are provided with the same headphones. Ms. Sarg saying that the CELPIP test is really difficult, not easy for immigrants. Don't you think you should make next exam a little easy, as most people like me is working and we have great experience, but when it comes to exams, sometimes we're nervous? Oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way, Ms. Sarg. That's why we do offer lots of preparation material to make sure that you do feel prepared for the test. So if you're struggling with the test or if you feel that you're struggling with the study material, that's kind of giving you a hint that you may need to prepare a little bit more. But the test is the same for all test takers. Our raters do not have access to any personal information about you. All they can see is the responses that you provide on test day. Calpete's asking, is spelling an autocorrect in writing task? Not autocorrect, but there is a spell check. What that means is that if you make a spelling mistake, it'll be underlined in red so that you have the opportunity to correct the spelling. Anku's saying, not sure if you already mentioned, pretest is only for reading and listening, important for people to know. Yeah, I did mention that, Ankur. Thank you for letting me know as well again. Thanks for all the great questions today. Muzafar is asking, I've maybe missed this if you already mentioned this, can you use CELPIP for Canadian schools? Some institutions or schools do accept the CELPIP test, so make sure you check with the institutions that you're looking to apply to. Sion's asking, how many tasks do we have for each section? So I went through the format of the test, Sion. If you did miss that, or if you were a little bit late joining us, keep in mind that we do have a recording of the information session on YouTube, but you can also see the format on our website at www.celpip.ca. Lizel's asking, if for instance I didn't get the desired CELPIP level on one of the language skills, can I retake that specific level only or have to sign up again for the test? Yeah, unfortunately, again, the institutions that accept the CELPIP test are not able to allow you to combine your scores, so you do need to get all of your scores in one test. Michaela's saying, will I be moved automatically from question to question after my time expires, or do I need to press the button next? No, once the time expires on each page or section, you will be moved on automatically. You do never need to press the next button if you don't feel like it. We do recommend that you do, though, of course. So if you finish the CELPIP test, of course, we do allow you to leave early if you finish early. But no, if the time expires, the test will automatically move on. Great question. Thanks, Michaela. Elna says, how do you rate if a total average is 8.5 across your 4 raters? Do you round it up or round down? So that would be, we would actually send your responses to more of our raters to get a cross-section of the results there. Ezra's asking, what types of materials are provided for free after the registration? So again, on our website at www.celpip.ca, you will be able to see a free sample test. Once you've created a CELPIP account, you'll get a separate free practice test as well. Calpete's saying you're not giving my answer. I've answered your question a couple different times, Calpete. But if you'd like to type your question again, if you missed my answer, you can certainly do so. Enko's asking, also the KL test discount code of $50 can be applied after the registration of CELPIP actual test also? Yes, absolutely. So as long as you take the KLCE test within 3 months of your CELPIP test, whether before or after, you will still be able to get a reimbursement of the $50, absolutely. Deepa's asking, do we have half band scoring as an IELTS? No. So the scores are round numbers. Chloe's asking, can I use my own headset if I bring one? Unfortunately not. You do need to use the headsets that we provide. Nasar's asking, writing test 1 is formal or informal? Again, you would write a grammatically correct response for each writing task, Nasar. Calpete's asking, could I have to give the whole exam if I fail? Yes, you need to register and pay for another test, Calpete. Kartan is asking, results should be ready in 8 business days. That means weekdays? Yes, that's right. So weekends are not included in the business days. Melchor's asking, is there a mock exam in the Philippines? Again, there are free sample tests on all of our websites. So at www.celpip.ca. Go to questions. Let's see. Aaron's asking, the reading test has the topic about Canadian history and lifestyle. It may have some general English questions about Canada, but not Canadian history. You don't need to study any information, study any facts for the CELPIP test. We're looking at your general English language proficiency. Michael's asking what the key success of the exam is. That's for you to prepare for the test. That's the biggest tip I can give, is make sure you prepare as much as possible. Janice is asking, are we going to have a practice test today? You can take a practice test on our website, but this information session is about information about the CELPIP test, so there's no practice test included in the information session. Sorry about that. Pritesh is asking, what is the cost for speaking books? So if you go to our website, www.celpip.ca, you'll be able to see all the study material there and the prices as well, Pritesh. Kelpete's asking how much is the cost of the test. Depends as to when you're taking. If it's the CELPIP General test, it's $280 plus tax. If it's the CELPIP General LS test, it's $195 plus tax. Rabbit Cats is asking, in the writing section, there is topic for agree or disagree. So do we need to choose either one strongly? Or raters are not looking at what your answer is in terms of there's no right or wrong answers. They're not looking at your opinion. They're not looking at whether the information is correct. Again, they're looking at your English language proficiency. DP's asking, is there any online videos available on YouTube for CELPIP preparation? Yeah, absolutely. That's something I was going to mention a little bit later there. But yeah, we do have a YouTube channel, so you can see that at the bottom there, and there is some preparation tips provided there as well. Hun is asking, do all test takers start at the same time? I worry if some other test takers start their speaking section first and affect others. Yeah, again, there is separation between each test taker, and we do provide those headphones as well. So we do find that there's not a lot of distraction. But again, if there is someone speaking very loudly, you can always put up your hand, and our test center staff would be happy to look into that for you. Ezra was asking about what types of materials are provided free after the registration. So again, a free practice test is included and a free sample test is included once you've opened up a CELPIP account. Woodland's asking, can I bring a cell phone to the test center? Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it's very hard to be without a cell phone. You won't be able to bring it into the test room, but it will be kept in a secured area. And Mozart is asking, in the speaking section, will each test taker be alone when speaking starts? You will be individually answering the speaking section, but of course the test is taken in a group environment, so there will be other test takers there. Robin Cat's asking, can we have break time between sections? Unfortunately not. Nisar is asking, can you please suggest which university uses CELPIP? Yeah, you'll be able to go on the websites of the universities that you're looking to apply to. They'll let you know if you're looking to, if they're accepting the CELPIP test. DP's asking, speaking test is divided under how many parts? 8 different tasks in the speaking section, DP. No problem, Lizel. Thank you, guys. Calpete's asking, did I have to give the whole exam if I fail? Yeah, you would need to give the full exam, absolutely. Michael's asking, what are the chances of getting 10 in each of the tests? Yeah, if you prepare as much as possible, absolutely, it does happen for sure. Vina's asking about score equivalencies with IELTS. Unfortunately, we don't know that information. We just run the CELPIP test here. Sorry about that, Vina. Hamid Reza is saying, let's suppose someone is answering the speaking questions, telling some story. Does he or she lose score if they cannot tell the whole story? It depends on the topic that they're being asked to speak about, but you do want to answer the complete topic in the response that you're provided, Hamid Reza. Hopefully that helps for you. DT's asking, is there any highlighter or marker available during the reading test to underline the information? Unfortunately not. Sorry about that, Dita. Irene's asking, do you think to enroll a school to practice CELPIP is better than just reading the practice test books? I mean, the CELPIP preparation courses are in depth. I mean, it is with an actual instructor. So it really depends on how prepared you feel and how you prefer to study for the test as well. Deepa's asking, for the survey question in writing, can we write it as an email or an essay? So again, our raters are not looking how you format your response. They're looking at the English language proficiency within the response. So there's no correct right or wrong formatting that you can provide for the test. Calpete's asking, are you planning to start exam center in India? Yeah, as I mentioned, Calpete's, we are going to be opening up a test center in India either in June, July, or August. We don't know the exact date yet or location. You can find more information about that on our website at www.celpip.ca. DT's asking, how many total questions will be given in listening and reading separately? Again, so I've gone through the format of the test there, DT. If you need to look at the format again, though, you can do that on our website at www.celpip.ca. Nisarg is asking, can you let us know any neighbor university who accepts CELPIP? I don't know that information personally, Nisarg. You'll be able to, again, look at the institutions that you're looking to apply to see if they accept the CELPIP test. Irene's asking, is there any website to get some sample tests? Yeah, our website, www.celpip.ca, does provide us a free sample test for you, Irene. Michael's asking, how can you check your result on sample test you did online? We do provide an answer key for you, Michael. Unfortunately, you don't get a score in the sample test, but you do in the practice test that you can purchase. Vina is asking what the score needed for Canadian permanent resident. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not sure what the score requirement is. That's something that you can check directly on the IRCC website. Perfect. Sorry, I kind of rushed through some of the questions there just to get to the end there, but hopefully I answered everyone's questions successfully. But we have reached the end of the information session today, so we stayed 15 minutes behind asking all the questions there. So if you do think of any more questions, you can always give us a call or send us an email. We do have live chat open most days. You can also send us questions on Twitter and Facebook. But perfect. Well, we have reached the end of the information session. One thing I'll leave you with is my biggest tip today, which is to prepare, prepare, prepare. Those test takers that go into the test and they don't feel prepared or they haven't done any preparation, of course, are not going to do as well as those test takers that have prepared for the test. So if you are looking to take the CELPIP test, prepare as much as you possible. We've got lots of free resources. We've got lots of paid resources to take advantage, but also do some of your own preparation in your own way that you feel comfortable as well. So again, prepare, prepare, prepare. Other than that, though, all I can provide you is our best of luck on the CELPIP test. We're rooting for you. Best of luck on your preparation, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for joining us.